Welcome to the 3 Knockdown Rule.
And welcome to another episode of Quick Jabs on 3 Knockdown Rule, brought to you by Hustler Casino. All right, let's get into this. This Saturday, I will be there making the drive after I film this from the Fontainebleau in Las Vegas on ESPN. Top Rank has their latest show. Now, I'm going to be honest, while the main event is the rematch between Michaela Mayer and Sandy Ryan for the WBO Women's Welterweight title, and also Brian Norman defending his WBO welterweight crown. I just want to let Brian Norman and his camp know April 15th is upon us. Tax day looms. I know that's big with them. But the real reason why I will be driving to this particular event is to see a fighter that I've liked for quite a while and I believe is on the verge of a title shot. Bruce Shoo Shoo Carrington at 14-0, 8 knockouts. He is taking on Enrique Vivas. Looking at the rankings at 126, Carrington's on the verge of a title shot sooner rather than later. Number 1 in the BO and BC, and those belts are held by Rafael Espinoza and Stephen Fulton. And he's number 2 in the WBA, whose belt is held by Nick Ball. Carrington has a lot of attributes like Lamont Roach. Not saying that they're completely identical. They're not. They have different styles. But the attributes that they have that I like is that they're solid all-around technicians. They don't have a lot of technical or fundamental flaws. They have good heads on their shoulders, and they seem to have a lot of character. And while they don't have what I'd call astounding power, what they have is speed and timing. And when I look at Carrington, the only question that I have is, how does he catch? That's going to be the last remaining question. Spoke to him late last week, and that's the focus of my K9's Corner on snack.com. He says, yeah, after this fight, I want a title shot, to a point that he's also said, I'm willing to go to the UK to take on Nick Ball on home turf. So that's what I really have my eye out this week when I'll be press row. Is Bruce Carrington a guy ready to take that leap into the 12-round level and fight for a world title? Moving on, quick jabs. This Saturday also, and I'll have to watch this later, on the zone from Cancun. Expect Nick Van Exel to be there. It is the rematch brought to you by Golden Boy Promotions between lightweight contender William Zepeda and Tevin Farmer. Now, last November, they were involved in a 10-round battle in Saudi Arabia. Very, very close fight. It actually saw Farmer score a knockdown of Zepeda, but I thought Zepeda outworked him and eked it out. And I wondered, why are they doing this rematch given the fact it was a 10-round fight, no title on the line, and at that point, coming into that bout, Zepeda was number 1 in all 4 sanctioning bodies, but now he's the interim titleist at WBC, so that's out the door. I asked Eric Gomez, well, why are we doing this fight? Was it you guys that wanted it? Was it Zepeda that wanted it? And he said, basically, the zone, Mauricio Sulaiman of the WBC, and Oscar, and the network, they all said, it's not a bad fight, let's do it again. And the real issue, according to El Presidente, Eric Gomez, is that Mauricio Sulaiman said, look, that was a very close fight. I'm still going to rank Farmer very, very high. And I looked at the rankings. He's still in the top 3. And it wasn't as if Zepeda was going to get a mandatory shot. He said, I'm still going to call for a series of eliminators. So at that point, I think Golden Boy and Zepeda's team said, you know what? If there's an issue with how close that fight was back in November, let's eradicate it and perhaps get even more experience against a southpaw. So I asked Eric a very blunt question. Okay, should Zepeda win this fight much more emphatically, do you then go after Shakur Stevenson, who is the full-blown WBC champion? Eric says, we wanted to do that fight last fall. Shakur had some hand issues. And again, I'm not so sure if that was really the case. Maybe they wanted to delay it a little bit, but Shakur has admitted my mitts are a little bit of an issue. But Eric said, not only are we going to look at that particular opportunity, but what about Tank Davis? Now, I have a question. Has Tank Davis, Lamont Roach 2 been finalized? And if you are William Zepeda, which is the easiest belt to pick off? He'd be the underdog in both fights. Now, with Davis, we understand the power and the strength that he brings. But he's easier to hit than Shakur Stevenson, who can be downright stealth inside that ring. And here's the other issue, and it's kind of big. which fight pays more, because this game is all about risk and reward. Also on this card, one of the best little fighters in the world today, showing up on various pound-for-pound lists. Puerto Rico's best, Oscar Collazo, defends his junior flyweight title on this card. That'll be televised on DAZN. And speaking of DAZN and Golden Boy, it was announced yesterday, April 19th from Oceanside, California. They will be putting on a card that'll be headlined or co-headlined by Gabby Fundura defending her titles. But the thing that interests me most about this particular event is the presence of Charles Conwell, a junior middleweight who I have described as the dark horse in that division. Conwell is 21-0, 16 knockouts, and at just 27 years old, right in his physical, athletic prime. Every time I see him, he is a guy that, again, reminds me a lot of Carrington and the Lamont Roach in a sense that they're athletic, fundamentally sound, they have a good, pleasing, stylistic type of way inside that ring, and he actually, I think, has better power within his weight division than those other two guys. Conwell right now is number 2 and 3 in the WBO and BC. Both of those belts are held by Sebastian Fundura. I asked Eric, and during our conversation, I said, Eric, I like Conwell a lot. When does he get his title shot? And Eric said, Steve, to be realistic, he's probably going to have to be number 1, and, this is important, be named the mandatory for any of the belt holders to fight him. I tend to agree with Gomez. The reality is a guy like Conwell brings a lot of risk and not that much reward, so there has to be an impetus for anybody that holds a belt to really face him, and this is where the sanctioning bodies do matter. I know a lot of people think that if you eradicate them, boxing would suddenly be perfect. I tend to disagree. I don't think there's any perfect game of boxing at the professional level. It's just not built that way. But when sanctioning bodies do their jobs the right way, it is fighters like Charles Conwell that otherwise would not get any protection or help that are then aided by this process. Here's hoping Charles Conwell gets a title shot within due time. All right, well, that's it for this week's edition of Quick Jabs. Just a friendly reminder, we have an evergreen show this week featuring the editor of Ring Magazine, our old friend Doug Fisher, and then next week, a lengthy conversation with Jim Lampley, who has a new book coming out, It Happened. This has been Quick Jabs on the 3 Knockdown Rule, brought to you by Hustler Casino.